with rescuing bees from buildings. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Most of it is pictures. There are a few videos. I'm slightly nervous about the videos because I think on Zoom and so on, they get a bit jumpy, but we'll just dig into it. And the idea is to give you an appreciation of the sort of stuff you end up stumbling across if you decide to have a go at rescuing bees from buildings. Now, I am a swarm collector, so it's nice and easy. You're covered by insurance and it's publicised who you are and where you are. The BBKA got a cracking little map. And you are expected to be able to respond. Otherwise, another beekeeper could be, or another swarm collector could be alerted. And many a time that two swarm collectors turn up to a swarm. If you're actually rescuing bees from buildings, it's slightly different. You do need your own insurance because it's not covered by the BBKA or anybody else. So it's always wise to get that sorted before you can contemplate doing some bee rescues. But it does involve building. I get a lot of calls. They can be from swarm collectors saying, "Oh, it's too late. They've gone into the building," or it can be from worried people say that they're moving house or they've noticed fuzzy things coming in and out of their chimney. Unlike swarm collecting, it's a bit of a planned event. Sometimes it involves a visit, but with the wonders of WhatsApp nowadays, you can actually get quite a good idea through pictures and videos from somebody about what you're going to be finding. So swarm collecting is nice and easy. It can be very simple. When the bees are there and you're able to grab them, they tend to do most of the work. Okay? So they wander in by themselves in the main. Once you've got them going in and all the queens inside, it's just a case of waiting. It's lovely. This is totally the opposite of doing bee rescues, certainly for the first part of it. This is what you stumble across. Someone, excuse some of these pictures, I didn't take them for this presentation. These are just things I took really to cover my insurance. It's a building, a flat roof building, and bees are coming in and out. So this is what you see. Okay, you have no idea what's on the other side. No idea at all. But that's just what's happening, and you've got to take a view from that. Normally the question is, how long will it take? So you have to be fairly quick. When you dig inside, taking some of the fascia off, there's not much of a gap, but you can see here a lot of comb, a lot of bees. They're all really quite comfortable and often don't need smoke, but really that's what you start to find. And then after you've cleared them all out, there's a rubble of the edge bits of the comb, and the rest of it hopefully is in the new box. Again, please excuse these early pictures. I wasn't really anticipating showing them to anybody. This is like a magnet for future bees. It reeks of honey. There's wax everywhere. And so if you leave it just like that, it wouldn't be too long before another swarm could potentially be in there. Now, there are ways to cheat. Hopefully you might be able to see my mouse, but just at the top of the ladder, there's a small hole where the bees are going in. But the question is, if you had to remove a brick, which brick would you remove? My gut feeling is always the one above the entrance because they tend to build upwards. But I've got a thermal imaging camera, so if I just show you the picture to the right, it's the same picture, but you can see the infrared sort of heat map of where the bees actually are. So the brick I would be removing is somewhere around here or here. Hopefully you can all see that. It makes it seem like I'm a real expert on what I do, but it's really good to be able to see on the other side of a shed or a brick or a ceiling or a floor. Give you another example. There are bees in this building. You can see them flying from the outside, but the question, how much of a colony is there on the inside? They said they've only noticed it for the last couple of days or so. When I took the picture, with the infrared camera, they'd been there a while, certainly more than a year. But again, like many things, people don't notice them until they do notice them, and then they want it all sorted. In this case, this is a bee colony under a floor in a shop. They were really nice. We would wait until 5 o'clock for the shop to close. They were kind enough to take the carpet tiles up. The bees are actually just under where the plugs are, under the floor. But have some basic equipment, certainly boxes to put them in, empty frames, combination of saws and drills, and absolutely a dustpan and brush. It gets very quickly. So the first thing to do is cut a section of the floor out, and then this one has got plywood on it to rest over the uneven floors underneath, and then see what's under there. And straight away, when you lift the floorboards up into a colony. Now you can see from the whiteness of the comb, this is a nice new colony. It's nice and small, so it's easy to get to. And what I'm able to do is take the comb out, start to measure it up to get it in the frames, and I bind it together with string. I'll show some examples of that later on. But the bees are really interested in staying on the comb, so you're able to move it to and fro as long as you do everything gently. Obviously, if the general temperament of the colony is a little bit squiffy, then it can get quite exciting quite quickly. Here's a frame just bound together with string. It's one of the emptier combs of theirs, but I put it in as a starter. And that way, when I shake the bees, they've got something to cling on to, hopefully with the sort of pheromones and warmth that they might be familiar with. I make my own frames. This is a simple frame made from a pallet. This one costs £1, this one costs a penny. So it's quite easy that way. Taking the bits up from the floor, you've got to remember to pick the honey. And like I said, it does get sticky very, very quickly. So job number one is to try to get stuff to go over the nuke box, scrape it in, and if you've got a handy, so much the better. With the colony out, it's empty. And because this one was a relatively new one, it was lovely and easy. So that took around about half an hour after cutting through the wood to get to that stage. The bees are interested. The ones that are flying around, really keen to get inside. Obviously, the queen's in there somewhere, and they know it. So they're just getting more and more, looking for ways into the box, and they find their way in. Even those that don't, I can just carry the whole box out and put it into the car, and they tend to stay there, so it's not too bad. And then I put the wood back where it was. This is where I cut it out, and a bit of vacuuming up, and it looked pretty much the same as it was. About an hour and a half all in. This was in a room with a glass partition, all the people staring on the other side, and I was passing out bits of comb with honey and asking for spoons, and they were filling it up and absolutely loving it. One of the things to remember is where the bees are coming in. So this is what I saw at the entrance when I turned up at the shop. It was clear where they were. It's always a bit awkward to get these things. Afterwards, fill it in with a bit of mortar, and that way you don't stop the bees coming in. There are bees here coming back. These are forager bees. They've been out and about while all the shenanigans has been going on and their home's been moved, but they would want to go back into the shop floor if the hole was still there. So it's good courtesy to block up the input. For those bees that really don't want to move, it's nice to have a bee vac. I don't know if you've ever seen these things. You plug your vacuum cleaner in one end and a tube in the other. The bees get sucked up, but they end up in this box in the middle. And it's incredibly useful, particularly for awkward corners or deep cavities. And then when I bring the bees back, I can shake most of them out, but these are the remnants just holding on. And most of them survive. I can't say that it's not a bit brutal on them, but it's pretty good if it's a sensible design. It's called a bee vac, incredibly useful for getting a lot of bees in one place very quickly. This is bees in somebody's bedroom. So this is a girl's bed. So I'll put a couple of sheets of plywood on top of the duvet and a sheet to protect things. I've got the box ready, got a few tools, but this is quite straightforward because just up above on the wall is an air vent. So this is the air vent as it was, and you could hear the buzzing on the other side. When you take the cover off, it's a relatively new colony again. It's only about 4 weeks old. But this is what you start to see, and you can see the comb. But as I take the comb, and the bees here, very, very gentle, absolutely lovely. Not a big swarm, but they've obviously moved in and they've been very, very busy. And this is a cracking one to just cut the comb off from the top, and it'll fill up 4 or 5 frames, go straight in the nuke, and away we go. When I take some of the combs off, you can dig in. They've already started laying brood. Some of it's sealed, all looking pretty good. It's really good here. You can check for disease and so on, but the bees are happy. A lot comes out, and everything's still pretty much fine. Still a lot of bees hanging around, as you see. So one of the things I'm careful to do is to block the entrance. In this case, it's not so much caulking or cementing up, it's putting some mesh in place. The forager bees coming back, a bit of a vacuum of the regular bees, and away we go. Yes, this is my attempt to put it back on, but they did say that they would get a proper vent cover once they were comfortable that the bees weren't going to come back into the vent. When you do bring the bees back, if you are a swarm collector and collecting bees, it doesn't always go well. If a lid is slightly loose, you can be driving like this. I just arrived home. I knew they were buzzing because I could feel them crawling on my neck and flying towards the front window, but they were collecting on the back window. Such is life. Sometimes when you get asked to rescue bees, they want to save the bees, they don't want them harmed, and you turn up and it's a big wasp nest. Try to ask if they're yellow. No, definitely bees. But in this case, it's just a hot tub. Take the pan a lot and massive wasp nest. I've started to take it apart to see what was inside. There's actually 2 nests in this one. So be mindful to check that bees going in. I even made a mistake of being confused between bees and wasps once. Awkward. Another one here, definitely bees. They're not yellow. Sirens, nothing to do with this. But these are actually hornets. The hornets nest in somebody's house. There's a hole here, and they're crawling under. Can't quite see the lead flashing here. That colony got dispatched. The reason they found them actually is because the hornets they thought they were big bees hovering in front of somebody else's hive. But what they were doing is obviously catching the bees and then bringing them back here, and it's relatively easy to follow them back. Swarm collection, nice and simple. Here's a swarm, if you can see, hanging in a tree. Got asked to do this one. They said, can you come at 9:40? And so I turned up at 9:40, and they explained that the kids are on their first break at 9:45. You've got 5 minutes to get the bees out, and this is the edge of what they see as their playground. Now, the principle of getting the swarm is roughly similar to getting the bee rescues done. It can be a bit awkward, you can see, logistically, and trying to balance and teeter and everything at the same time. But if you can get the bees and the queen in the box, then largely it's the job done. A little bit of spillover on that one, but come down, get the lid on. Bear in mind it's playtime in 5 minutes, so you've got to be fairly quick. I leave a few of the frames out so that there's space to get in. They don't squeeze in that easily. You can see gently going down, the beads are in the way, but this is collecting a simple form, it says. Another few seconds to go. Kids are all staring at the window. I was told I had to wear the bee suit and everything, health and safety. They asked if I'd done a risk assessment. And I said, it's going to take me more than 5 minutes to do a risk assessment. And I told them it would take a few minutes to get the bees into the box. So, yeah, I don't know what it was at the end, but a minute and a half. So nice and simple. But bee rescues can be a bit different. This one here, got bees going into bricks, so put some ladders up, protect the bushes. You don't really know what's going to come out, but there will be concrete dust. In there you can see the bees coming in and out. So it's at the top of a room, actually just under a flat roof. It's quite a wide nest, this one, involving 3 sets of rafters. So take them out. I was going to cut the middle brick out, but it wasn't needed in the end. I could get it from either side, get the bees into the box, and then ideally mortar it all back up. In this case, the customer wasn't comfortable that the bees wouldn't go back in there again, so I put some mesh covers over the top. Looks slightly plasticky, but it gave them peace of mind. It's an interesting sort of one. That they show you bees going into a building. I could see them going in, flying around. Lovely day. They don't know how long they've been there, but they'd only noticed them a few weeks ago, so they have to go up some steps into the building. In this case, the bees are somewhere up here. I use the thermal camera, again protecting the floor. Got the box for the bees, a bin, lots of tools. You never know what's going to happen next. So cut out a section. You can see an X marked on here. The reason I did that is because once I lift that down, I can put it back in the same position. Otherwise, you're trying to figure out what goes where. And this is what you find when you take it out. Lovely colony, very calm, absolutely heaving. But what was brilliant about this one is that the comb is all built nice and parallel. So one of the things I do is measure the gaps between the combs and count through to see how the bees build it, and to see if it's the same, for example, as a standard Hoffman spacing. It rarely is. Bees do it slightly differently. Cutting out the sections, putting it into the frames, got brood on here, obviously bees, and then the high-tech garden twine, holding it all together. I'd taken the bees off at one point, but not to get rid of the bees, to make sure the thing wasn't going to fall apart. And start cutting out whole sections of the hive. I thought this was where the colony was, because that's where the thermal imaging camera showed me. In reality, it went much further up. The bees are obviously interested. They're in there. So the queen is in there, so I'm comfortable taking more and more of the colony out, minding wires and bits and pieces. Lots of bees on the Velux window. Yeah, that was a bee vac job to get rid of that. This here is where I've taken yet more bits of the ceiling off, only to find it goes up even further. At this stage, it's roughly solid honey. And I think this is it. It ended up being about 8 feet long, this slot, and nearly around about 9 feet tall. You can see the mess on the wall here, where I've ended up putting my hands on the wall with sticky honey. But it's all out, apart from the top remnants. I block the entrance so the bees can't get in, and then it's a case of putting some ceiling drip rock back on, and sealing it all up, ready for a final plaster coat. That one took about 4 hours all in, and it was very large. It filled up 3 new boxes and a red 25 litre. This one is a chicken shed. Again, the thermal imaging camera is very handy, but here is a classic B entrance, so that would not. So they came in and able just to ease off 3 of the slats of wood to find the comb and the bees inside. Looks lovely, actually. And there's somebody helping me on this one. It's first bee removal. Now, to get the shed, find the nest, figure out where they are, to take the 3 slats off, take all the comb out, put it into a new box, to separate some of the honey off, put it in a separate bag and give it to the homeowner, and then a bit of a bee vac for the rest of it, then put the slats back and go was 45 minutes. So it's fairly quick because it's on the side of a building. Some of them we need a cherry picker. So here's one here. I've turned up behind it. He said, "Can you come out?" And there are bees in this chimney. So take the top off, and yep, the classic sort of comb, very wild comb. You can't measure the gaps between comb on this one because it's all pretty random. I ripped it slightly because it was connected to the chimney pot, but clearly it goes down quite deeply. So the whole chimney pot had to go off. Notice here we've got swarm cells, so they've recently swarmed, which again can be quite common. That's how people notice they've got bees in a building, because the bees come piling out. Start taking all of the colony out from the chimney, bit by bit, lump by lump. And bees can be pretty calm while this is happening. And then afterwards, the chimney looks like this, and then clear. If you drop things, it goes all the way down. The bees follow it down, and it could end up making a mess in the sitting room. So you need to be very mindful of what you're doing. On this one, bees going into an old overflow pipe hole that's there, and I cut into the mortar on a few bricks, brick out, and this is what you start to find inside. A single brick can be enough to get a colony out of a cavity wall. It does mean it's like taking some comb or trying to pass frames through a letterbox. It can be, it's awkward. There's no 2 ways about that. But the customer experience is always very nice because it's minimal damage or disruption to our home. And then cement it all back afterwards, and job's done. It's just there drying off. So got a bee colony, and the customer no longer has a problem. This is an interesting one. Bees going into a hole. It doesn't look too bad, but the homeowner was complaining about noise on the inside, so they'd obviously been there a little while. Now, normally, again, traditionally, I'd think that's the hole, so I would cut some bricks out from up there. But if you look here, this is the same. This is that section there. So these are the windows around the corner. Right in that corner's where they're going in, and they've actually built their whole colony downwards from here. If I hadn't got the thermal imaging camera, I would have completely gone the wrong way and taken some of these bricks out up here, only to find there's nothing there. So cut a brick out. This is what you find on the inside. And then it's all taken out. Then it's bricked back up. And a bit of coal in here, because this was their entrance. These bees are still wanting to get back. And I'll show you another one. This is looking at a home, ground floor, just, oh, crikey. I don't need to. Okay, well, it's ground floor, bees going in and out. When I take part of the fascia off, wooden fascia, and they're repainting it, see some lovely new comb here, but this is where the colony is, and there's new comb along here as well. So they're in the throes of building, but this is where the main colony is. Again, that main colony, and they're expanding, building an extension on their block. So that was my entrance slot, if you like, and getting the bees out. I'd had the box here, but the ones coming back were clustering underneath. It happens. You can either ignore it or vacuum them up or entice them into the new box where the queen is. Fix it back together, some screws, and a bit of cork. I hadn't got brown cork. They were happy. They were painting everything white afterwards, so white it was. So section I took out. This was a section that I was trying to take out, but it would not come, so I didn't bother in the end. But yep, looks okay. It'll look nice once it's painted. Sometimes you get bees in trees, so classic sort of wire-shaped tree, and up in this branch, the left-hand branch, pointing up at 11 o'clock, is a bee colony. I would have wanted to leave it where it was, but the bees were stinging the dogs, which was a bit of a worry, because inevitably you can guess what happens to me when I go up there. But this is what I find. There's a hole that they're going in and out, but it seemed to be growing their own twigs out of the hole as well. So it's a case of trimming this lot back, sticking your arm into the hole, and in this case it was right up to my armpit to reach into it, get the bees out, and then afterwards I cut out a piece of wood to fit the hole, cork it in, stick some dirt on it, and then it's not a door, by the way, it's actually a sort of block to stop the bees getting in and out. But that tree, a little bit shaky in that it was very hollow on the inside, but managed to get the colony out and safe. Sometimes bee rescues are also swarms. This is a swarm, lovely, looking on the side of the building. The only challenge was no one wanted to touch it because it was that high off the ground. That's my motorcycle there that I turned up, actually in a high street in Chester, on the 4th floor, I think, or so. So it's a case of reaching up there and collecting them. Now, when you see this happening on a hole in the wall, you can sort of guess by the amount of traffic how many bees are in there. Obviously, pollen's going back in, so it's likely that they've got a lot of larvae in there as well. In this case, it's threading it through some gazebo, and those are the bricks taken out. So quite high up, quite awkward. I've got here something called a standoff, which you attach to a ladder. Incredibly useful for propping your tools on there afterwards. This is the entrance. Sorry about the jumpiness on Zoom, but hopefully you get the idea. Very, very interesting finding this. And this is bees living entirely naturally. Taking the comb out is both awkward, but it's an absolute joy as well. You can thread large sections of comb out through a brick shaped slot. In this case, lots of seal brood, larvae in there. Bees very interested. All goes in the box. And then afterwards, it's clean and clear. Obviously, the bees are still interested in going inside, So a bit of a BVAC, and then a case of getting the bricks back in. There will unfortunately be a few bees trapped inside, but the idea is to make it as good as it was, and it sort of looks okay. Some of them are up high. The bees were up here, some kind of ancient building, and the ceiling up here is 300 years old, so it was full of dust and everything. So again, the thermal imaging camera, incredibly handy. I cut out a section of the floor and can hear all of the comb. Really good one here to measure end to end to find out the spacing of the brood and so on. But it obviously wasn't the edge of the nest, so ended up cutting another hole here and then another hole here. Again, it's another nest that's gone nearly 10 feet into a property. But although the holes are staggered, I can reach in with my arms, get the comb out from each way, so I can completely clear it. This filled 5 new boxes with comb, obviously one queen. But what I did is I grafted from the larvae to make some more queen cells and try to keep it going as several colonies with larvae. Some of them quite straightforward as well. Bees in an air brick. In this case, I got the call at 5:30 p.m.-ish, and they said, we're closing at 6. We don't want you doing anything at 6 o'clock. I got there just in time to this. But they opened at 8 o'clock next morning, and they wanted the bees gone by then, but not to disturb the neighbours. So I had 30 minutes from 7:30 to 8 o'clock. So case of using a grinder to cut around the edge and take the brick out. And this is what you find. It's not very clear. It's a swarm, one night, and they've already built their first comb. So literally from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m., they're already on the case. Makes it slightly awkward to get all the bees, but you can scoop them out with your hand into a nuke box, but you do miss a few because they've not got things to cling on to. Oh, let me go just a little bit here to the other one. Again, cutting bricks out. I use a diamond cutting wheel to cut out where I know the bees are. I take out the minimum that I actually have to, but as much as needed to get in. And
Karl, if you're on a new PowerPoint, we can only see any questions from your old one.
Excuse me a second. Right. Let me do this and do this. And then do this. Does that work? Does that say part 2?
That's the one.
Right, thank you. Sorry. Old man, new technology. So cutting sections out with a diamond cutting wheel, very useful. Take out the minimum number of bricks. This is the entrance here. This is where the colony is. In this case, I needed to just dig in a bit further. Brick dust on them, covering some of the larvae and so on. Bit of a mess, but I'm in. And you can see the bees are happy. They don't seem too fussed, even though I've just been using a hammer chisel on the side of their home and taking the wall off. But once you've taken it all out, excluding some of the honey that's still dripping down, it's all in the boxes. It's the sealing it back up, and away you go. This is an odd job. I don't do jobs other than in summertime, but this is mid-November. They're building an extension. They started pulling all of this off. They'd noticed bees coming out of the fascia board. Really reluctant to do this because I can't really guarantee that I've got any chance of saving the bees if I'm doing this in mid-November. But they said their only choice is to kill the bees. So I went ahead and rescued them anyway. This is what you find on the inside. Nice little slot. I've taken some of the wooden fascia board off. There's a big rafter in the way, so there's not much space. But again, calm and clear, but it was a much bigger nest than I first anticipated. So just as the line goes on jaws, yeah, I think I'm going to need a bigger box. And out it starts to come. Quite a lot of comb coming out. Got the bees out, got the queen out, got the brood out. And funny enough, he said, yeah, loads of eggs and larvae being laid in mid-November and seal brood. The colony was just still prolifically producing bees. Interestingly, they didn't have a lot of honey stores left because these bees were eating it all up and it was the end of the foraging season. So bees would have probably just perished over the winter anyway. And then he fixed it back on, cementing back in the brick I took out and using some black cork to put the black fascia back. But then obviously the whole wall comes off next week because the builders feel comfortable they can get in. But when they take the wall off, this is what they find underneath the old comb, and this starts attracting all the bees back again. So they have to come back and lovely old comb in there for ages. The swarm hadn't been occupying. They'd obviously occupied something very recently, but there's been a sort of legacy of bees up in this roof for a long, long time, not been noticed with the shape of the building. And it only got seen once half the building got demolished. So just to summarize on all of this, you will need to get insured. Either get trained by somebody or get tooled up. It all can get very sticky very quickly. If it's a recent swarm, gone into an air vent or something, then wait 3 weeks. I showed you some video of some bees in a girl's bedroom, and waited 3 weeks. They built out the comb wonderfully, started laying some eggs and larvae, some seal brood appearing, and it was really easy to transfer that into a new box. If the colony's been established for a while, it's good to get to know the colony. So on the larger ones, again, that long strip, 8 feet tall on the inside of a building, took me 4 hours to get out. You get to know the colony, how it's constructed, how the bees are behaving, and almost like having 6 brood boxes on top of one another with no queen excluder, and get to understand how they work. Now, you can go crashing and bashing and take whole sections out, but the idea is to intervene to a minimum, because you probably have to make good what you've done. If you want to attach something, you're probably obliged to reattach it. Lots of people choose not to do that. It's not so good. It does attract the bees back. Please get photos and videos if you have a go at doing this. The client's really interested. People are amazed at just how many bees are in there, and they love it when you can give them some comb honey and a bag full of honey. You pierce a hole in the bag and honey just drips out and straight into a colander in their kitchen. Now, a few little points here. When you've got colonies that have been established for a while, I've yet to stumble across a colony that is light or yellowish in colour. Nothing against yellow bees, but mainly dark bees seem to be the ones which are survivor bees out in the wild. And by that, I mean they get no support, no varroa treatments, no feed, no anything. They just have to make do. But I rarely see yellow bees in established colonies. I do see them in new ones, in swarms, but not in the long established ones. Another weird thing, I do check for disease, so it's really good to see the larvae. So I'm looking for them being, as Roger Patterson would say, white, bright, and curled up tight. And with the sealed larvae, seeing that they're actually a slight sort of dome to the cell, and they're not dipped in, because these are indications of EFP and AFP, and the last thing I want is to bring that back into an apiary. But I don't see much varroa. I used to treat them as a matter of course after a bee extraction, but I don't do that. Whereas with swarms, I often treat them after a swarm call. Now, old comb is left, newer comb is made. So rather than we do, we're sort of every 3 years, we're meant to be swapping the comb over. The bees do it by building further and further along the or wall or floor, wherever it is. So you can end up with a lot of old comb off one side, just as I showed you in that last one. And I talked about measuring the gap between the combs. I think Hoffman's are 35 millimeter gaps. The wild combs tend to be at least 36 millimeters and up to about 38. So if something's telling me that frames are available and they're sort of 37 millimeters tall, it's the way that the bees choose to make it themselves. Not made up, just measure it when you can. If you can't measure it, so be it. But for some reason, they tend to want a bit more of a thickness to them than we give them on our standard frames. Right, I think that's me.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Karl. If you have questions for Karl, please put them into the chat. We've had a couple of questions already, and Martin shared some bits that he does when he does removals as well, so we'll get to those as well. The first question that came in early on in the presentation is, how much does the insurance cost and where do you get it from? Which insurance provider do you use? Okay.
They ask questions, how long you've been keeping bees, how many colonies have you got, what qualifications you've got. So there is a bit of a thing to it. Mine, I think, was £375. I can't remember the name of the company. Type in bee insurance. I know the bee farmers have it as a standard. There may be a book that helps with all the technical things. As somebody's just written a book very recently, a guide to the safe removal of honeybee colonies from buildings. Clive Stewart wrote it, and I think they were assisted by Stuart Robert, and that's just very recently available in Northern Bee Books. They'll probably be able to help with all of the geeky questions about asbestos and building regs and insurances and so on.
Excellent, thank you. The next question was, do you charge for the service of removing bees? And if so, how much do you charge if you want to give that information away?
Awkward. Some I do for free. If I had to say a standard minimum price, it's built up in a way. I charge £85 for the hive that they go into, £55 for the intensive care that I give the bees afterwards, and £90 for the extraction end to end. So it ends up as sort of £220. There's working at height, so that includes the cement and maybe some replacement bricks. But it really varies. Some of them, like the chicken shed one I showed you, nothing. There's no charge for that. That was easy. The ones which are complicated, working on ceilings where everything's above your head and everything's dripping down onto you. It's a lot of work to clear everything up afterwards. Everything is smothered in honey. So I do ask for a charge for that from time to time. People like the fact that I'm there to rescue the bees and not to let them perish. So some people are willing to help. But some of it as well is the affordability. from people. It gets a bit different when it's working at heights. If you're up on a cherry picker, you've got to pay for that, and then there's a banksman and whatever. So I never charge afterwards. I always pre-agree a price with the customer.
Thank you. Montserrat wants to know, did the colony collected in November manage to survive?
Well, it's only 2 months old. It's still there, but I'm not comfortable with it. I've moved some extra honey in from 2 other colonies, but yeah, it just doesn't feel right to do it at the wrong time of year. So I think with the swarm, I'd say 98% success rate once I've got it into a box. With a bee rescue in the summer, 80% plus success rate in it surviving. This one in November, I would get it.
20.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right to do it. But they did make it clear that they were going to kill the colony if I didn't try to rescue it. I didn't expect to have so much brood.
Yeah, that's the only thing, isn't it? There's a something to be said for would a colony like that have survived in the wild by raising brood so late into the year and having no honey stores left?
Yeah.
But it certainly would have died if you hadn't have been in there, because they'd have knocked it on the head, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
There's a couple of things come in from Martin, who obviously has done quite a few bee removals. He said, do you find the same, that in the majority of the removals that he's done this year, nearly all of them have been the warm way, relevant to the entrance?
It depends on where the entrance is relative to things like rafters in particular. Yes, I would tend to agree. They tend to be the warm way or on a diagonal.
Right.
But if the rafters force them to go the cold way, they'll go the cold way straight away. The ones on that roof where they went all the way up for 8 feet was classic cold way. It would be nonsensical for them to build them the warm way if they could have seen where they're going to. Obviously, they've got a hive mind. I don't understand it completely. Yeah, I see both ways, but I would tend to say they tend to be either the warm way or diagonal.
Right. And Martin has recommended the same book that you did, from Clive Stewart from Northern Bee Books.
Martin, if you want to do this presentation, please. Yeah, it's terrifying.
Well, he's also recommended Vicks for running the bees out. I don't know if you use Vicks Vapor Rub. That might be one to try. Julian wants to know, what type of thermal imaging camera do you use? Obviously, that tech is vital in some scenarios for you. It locates those bees very, very quickly and easily, doesn't it?
Yeah, I use a FLIR camera. It's built into the phone, so switch on. It's not cheap, but can't really. If I put my hand up, you see it. If I put my hand on a wall and then take it off, he says, "Yeah, can you see my handprint on the wall?"
Yeah.
So it's very, very simple. Yeah. Very sensitive. FLIR, FLIR.
And
you can actually have one that's an attachment that plugs into your charger at the bottom of the phone.
But if people are interested and they're changing mobile phones shortly or need a new one, it might be worth trying to get one that's got one built in.
Well, I use it a lot for my overwintering nukes, because I can just point the thermal imaging camera at the nuke box and do drive-by inspections. I can see where they are in the nuke box and how high up they are and how big it is, and that tells me how much stores they've got left. I don't have to look in the boxes.
Right. Very clever. Paul wants to know, how many cases of disease have you seen in how many cutouts, if any?
Not disease as such, but I do see tuck brood, ball brood, but no AFP, EFP, nothing like that. And if I did, I would report it straight away. and it will probably mean that a fair bit of my kit can't be used again because I can't run the risk of using it on my other bees, or even just carrying it in the van. I'm very sensitive to the FB and AFB. I've never seen it in my colonies real, but I've been on disease courses where I've been able to see examples of it. So it's useful to know the basics. But yeah, seeing board brood where the cap around seals and the larvae is still sort of and transforming, that's always a bit of a worry. And chalk brood as well. I do see a fair amount of
that. What kind of protective clothing do you use when pulling combs out of cavities?
I wear gloves, or I don't normally wear gloves or a bee suit, but gloves and a bee suit, you never know what you're going to get, and there is some bumping when you're trying to get a comb out and around a corner. You're trying to bend it through a hole, and I know sometimes it's lumpy and bumpy on the beads. It's a compromise because the other way is to take 6 or 10 bricks out, but not everybody's happy about that, and it's more difficult to get them back in the same position, particularly if it's high up or on a corner. I don't want it to look different after I've been there, so it's important.
Excellent. Graham says you're undercharging. There's a Surrey-based removal that's charging between 1.5k and 12k plus VAT.
I'm not comfortable really with talking too much about pricing. I choose to do it on a not-for-profit basis and look to cover my costs. I don't always cover my costs, and other people charge different amounts. I really don't want to judge other people. Is mine a business? No, it's not a business. Am I available to do it all over the country? No, I'm not. So I don't think I offer the same scope of service that other providers do. But yes, it can be expensive elsewhere. But similarly, I'm sure it can be cheaper elsewhere as well.
Any final questions that people want to put in the chat? I think I've gone through all the ones that are already in there. Just give people a final moment. No, that looks like oh, fantastic awareness. What do you do with all the bees?
Well, I put them in hives. I build the hives and I stick them in places around Cheshire. I've got, I think, 22 apiaries in Cheshire.
Excellent. Super. Well, that's all the questions for this evening. Karl, we are very grateful for your talk this evening. Fascinating subject of removing bees. Many beekeepers go out there and they'll collect those easy to reach swarms, but we soon turn our nose up when somebody rings and says, "I've got bees in my cavity wall," and we say, "I'm sorry, can't do anything about that." But you're out there and you're doing it, so that's great. Great for people who are in a tough situation, and great for the bees, because it is quite easy for people to turn around and say, well, fair enough, we'll just poison them then and get rid of them that way. So you're doing your bit for the environment as well, so well done to that.
Well, thank you. That's what got me into it. People were killing them, and but similarly, I know that the spaces they were going into weren't really big enough for them, so they're either going to abscond or settle in there and just regularly swarm. And as a swarm collector, I used to pick up 2 or 3 swarms from a shed each year because the people didn't want the bees taken out. But it was suddenly overflowing, and then the neighbours started to complain about the swarms. So that's why I started to get into the bee removal. It is challenging. You never know what you're going to come across next.
Do you pick up much in the way of good genetics that you tend to propagate from colonies that you've found?
Yes. There are some that I choose not to, and I do requeen, but there's some fantastic survivor bees in there, and I'm really interested see how they behave in a hive and how they behave with minimal intervention from me. So I do monitor them quite closely like that, and that's part of the sort of intensive care afterwards. The survivor bees are probably the ones you could ever find that just die without the beekeeper interfering with them. So it is a bit of a holy grail that, as I said, you never know what you're stumbling across next.
No, a bit of a lottery when you take those bricks out.
Yeah, or when they're told, yeah, stinging the dogs all over the place. So can you get them out? You know it's going to be sporty. Yeah.
Did you wear a full suit for the wasp nest?
I wear the top tunic.
Right.
I put gloves on. But a wasp nest's a bit scary, but you can cut them out quickly and put them straight into a bag.
Right.
And it's done. So it's very fast, and I'm not so mindful of the sort of the welfare of the wasp.
No. Enough said. Karl, thank you so much for giving your presentation. You are working on some books. I know that they're not quite ready yet, but people need to be on the lookout for those when they come out, because they'll be a fascinating read. Karl, thank you very much for tonight, and we'll see you